To order. Welcome to meeting number 88 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders, and therefore members are attending in person in the room as well as virtually using the Zoom application. I'd like to make a few comments for the benefit of members and our witnesses. Before speaking, please do wait until I recognize you by name. You may speak in the official language of your choice. Interpretation services are available. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. Although this room is equipped with a powerful audio system, feedback events can occur. These can be extremely harmful to interpreters and cause serious injuries. As such, I just wanted to highlight that the most common cause of sound effect is an earpiece worn too close to a microphone. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do our very best to maintain a consolidated order of speaking for all members. Now, just for the benefit of the members, I did want to inform you that today we have 5 top drawer students from Carleton University here in Ottawa. So welcome to all of you. Now, as for the subject matter of today's session, as you're all fully aware, for the first 50 minutes, we will focus on supplementary estimates for 2023-2024. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee will commence its study of the subject matter of supplementary estimates for 2023-24. Votes 1B, 5B, and 10B under the Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development, and vote 1B under the International Joint Commission. Now, I'd like to welcome our witnesses. Today we have 3 witnesses from the Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development. We have with us Ms. Shirley Carruthers, the Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer. We have Mr. Peter McDougall, who's the Assistant Deputy Minister, Global Issues and Development. And we also have with us Ms. Amanda Strohan, the Director General, Indo-Pacific Strategy Policy, Planning and Operations. Now, it's my understanding that Ms. Carruthers is the one who has opening remarks. You will be provided 5 minutes for your opening remarks, after which we will proceed with the members and the questions they may have. So, Ms. Carruthers, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity to be here to discuss Global Affairs Canada's Supplementary Estimates B. To begin, I would like to acknowledge I am speaking from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, and I am grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory. Today I'm joined by Peter McDougall, Assistant Deputy Minister of Global Issues and Development, and Amanda Strohan, Director General of Indo-Pacific Strategic Planning, Policy and Operations Bureau. Mr. Chairman, I would like to begin by outlining the scope of our mandate. Under the leadership of 3 ministers, Global Affairs Canada is responsible for advancing Canada's values and interests internationally through diplomacy, developing and implementing foreign policy, promoting international trade while supporting Canadian business interests, being a leader in delivering international development assistance, including humanitarian assistance around the world, and providing consular assistance to the many Canadians who work, live, and travel abroad. To deliver this mandate and position Canada as a global leader, Global Affairs Canada operates in 182 missions in 112 countries around the world, sometimes in the most difficult and high-risk environments. We do so in an evolving and challenging global political and economic climate. The additional funding sought through these supplementary estimates will allow Canada to lead in demonstrating to Canadians and the world that our actions can make a real contribution to addressing the interconnected crisis of climate change and biodiversity loss, strengthening Canada's partnership and influence abroad, and responding to the needs of the most vulnerable people in the world through the humanitarian development, peace, and security nexus. Through the Supplementary Estimates B, Global Affairs Canada is seeking an increase of $816.7 million to its current authorities of $7.6 billion, bringing our total authorities to $8.4 billion. Much of the additional funding sought through these supplementary estimates will support global climate change and advance the priorities of the government and Canadians. More specifically, it relates to the following activities. $430 million to deliver on a portion of Canada's climate finance commitment to help developing countries fight climate change through climate resilience and greenhouse gas emission reductions. The funding will advance climate change mitigation and adaptation action with a focus on clean energy, natural-based solutions, and green financing. $100 million to advance global health investments and to ensure Global Affairs Canada can deliver on its 10-year commitment to global health rights. The funding will directly support improved health services and health systems for women and girls in developing countries. $74 million to support the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, increase access to HIV/AIDS, TB, and malaria health services for women and girls. $65.9 million to support the Global Middle East Strategy. This funding will allow for programming of Global Affairs Canada's continued implementation of the strategy to address instability in Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. $63.6 million to support Global Affairs Canada's implementation of Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy through increased engagement in the Indo-Pacific region and enhanced economic linkages and trade and investment ties with the Indo-Pacific partners. Ty?
My apologies. The interpreters are having a hard time hearing you, so if you could just lean in a bit into the microphone. Thank you.
Oh, there. Is this better?
Yes.
And finally, $25 million to replenish the crisis pool quick release mechanism to address various international human crises. The funding requested through these supplementary estimates will support Canada's role in addressing major global issues and will contribute to enhance the political and economic cooperation and engagement, particularly in the Eastern Europe and Indo-Pacific regions, while also reinforcing Canada's leadership. The Department continues to measure performance and communicate results to Parliament and Canadians. We emphasize responsible financial management to deliver against our mandate and ensure the highest standards of service to Canadians, particularly those requiring assistance abroad. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My colleagues and I would be pleased to address any questions that you or other members may have about these supplementary estimates.
Thank you very much for that. Now we proceed to questions from the members. Mr. Chong, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for appearing for the estimates. The Senate report today highlighted that a large proportion of Global Affairs Canada's full-time equivalents, 15%, are allocated to internal services such as communication services, financial management, human resources, IT management and oversight services, and so on. So I know that in the report, the Senate report, they highlighted that in places like Norway, they are looking at efficiencies to reduce the cost of internal services. Can you tell us what efforts Global Affairs Canada is making to reduce the overhead?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Global Affairs Canada is trying to instill a culture of reallocation. This is something that was highlighted within our transformation implementation plan. I would say one of the initiatives that is ongoing right now is actually what we're calling a red tape reduction. And through this initiative, we're actually engaging with partners across the organization. So folks who are abroad at missions and kind of are subject to some of the policies and the things that we impose on them from a headquarters perspective. So we are identifying those things that are most administratively burdened to the organization in an effort to try to reduce cost, create efficiencies, and of course make things a little bit easier for folks who are working in a very, very busy environment.
The report also highlighted the cumbersome nature of the Foreign Service directives. Is there a move underfoot to rationalize those directives so they're not as bureaucratic and cumbersome?
I would say, well, thank you very much for the question, first of all. Just in terms of the Foreign Service directives, they're actually governed under the National Joint Council. And so negotiations in terms of reviewing those Foreign Service directives is normally done on a cyclical basis. It's called a cyclical review. But certainly, I think in the context of the Transformation Implementation Plan, one of the things that is highlighted is, to take a look at the Foreign Service directives. But in the past, it has been a cyclical process.
Part of the funding you're asking for is for the Indo-Pacific strategy. Can you tell us how much funding already has been allocated to date to implement the strategy? And then secondly, how much funding, how has that funding been allocated to each of the 5 strategic objectives?
Thank you very much for the question, and I'll hand it to my colleague Amanda in just one moment. But maybe what I can do first is just to start by saying that Budget 2023 did announce a total of $2.26 billion in funding for the region, and this is a whole-of-government strategy, as you're likely aware, that does include 16 government agencies. So Amanda, over to you.
Certainly. Thanks for the opportunity to respond to this question. So Global Affairs Canada will be receiving under Supplementary Estimates B $63 million for this fiscal year for the implementation of the Indo-Pacific Strategy. I'm afraid that I don't have that broken down by strategic objective, but I can provide you a little bit of detail in terms of the different sort of sub-initiatives that funding will be allocated to. So for example, advancing international clean technology demonstration, the Clean Tech Demonstration Initiative, accounts for approximately $700,000 of that funding. Enhancements to the Can Export program accounts for approximately $7.5 million of that funding. The Team Canada trade missions, $4.1 million, and the Science and Technology Innovation Partnerships, approximately $9 million. Under cybersecurity, regional capacity enhancements, and security partnerships and capacity building accounts for a total of $23 million. And then a number of other initiatives, including the Canada-ASEAN Plan of Action Trust Fund, the Disaster Risk and Resilience Initiative, the expanded SEED Scholarship Program, the Feminist International Assistance Policy Enhanced Funding, and again, the Regional Capacity Uplift accounts for approximately $23 million. Apologies, I'm going to correct myself. In that second bucket was $18 million, and the third bucket is $23 million. I can provide more detail on that if you're interested, but it is a very complex and dense sort of list of initiatives.
If you could provide it to the chair of the committee later, that would be great. Last question I have is, according to preliminary data from the OECD, Canada's ODA last year was 0.37% of GNI. I note that the estimates would provide additional funding for the international assistance envelope. What does the Government of Canada estimate its ODA funding as a percent of GNI will be for the fiscal year 2023-2024?
I'm sorry, I don't have that information with me. No, so we will have to get back to you with that.
Okay, if you could, that would be helpful. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chong. We next move to MP Zuberi. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. I want to thank you for your detailed explanation of the estimates at the top. You spoke about funding additional funds of $64 million for the Middle East. And if I'm correct, between 2016 and 2022, the Government of Canada, with respect to its Middle East strategy, invested $4 billion in response to crises. $4 billion.
Actually, the number is $4.6 billion since 2016. Yeah.
So I did a small calculation on that. If you divide that over 6 years, that is $666 million. If it's $4 billion, so 4.6 would make it higher, maybe about $700 million per year. You're asking only for $64 million right now. Is that right?
That's correct.
The spending would be drastically different from in the past.
So if we're looking at the total amount that's been committed of 4.7 billion, that actually includes, that's our whole of government strategy, and so the number that I'm referring to in these main estimates is just for the Department of Global Affairs, and so that's why if you look at it, from just dividing the number against the number of years, it won't match up to the amounts that we have in our current estimates.
So is this 64 million, and how does that relate to past spending on this particular region of the world?
Just in terms of the overall funding profile, I have it in front of me. So last fiscal year, just in terms of our grants and contributions, we did disperse 78.8 million, whereas for this fiscal year, we have a total of 46.1 million.
So it's roughly a little bit less, but roughly the same. Roughly the same. Okay. Can you talk about some of the, so we're not looking at additional funding, we're looking at more, slightly less, but somewhat the same. Can you talk about the outcomes of a Middle East strategy?
Yeah, certainly.
Hope to do
And I
into the
may
future?
ask my colleague Peter if he can speak maybe to some of the specific results around humanitarian assistance. But what I can say is that we have achieved some real concrete results since the beginning of this strategy in 2016. Canada has been consistently among the top 6 official development assister donors in each of the 4 countries in the Middle East under the strategy, so Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. We have been able, there's been 200 million square meters of land that have been cleared from explosives in both Iraq and Syria. We've provided some specialized training in the region as well as equipment. 1.5 billion just in terms of humanitarian assistance to ensure that folks have the proper food, water, and shelter, improved education. But perhaps, Peter, I'm not sure if you have some additional details regarding specifics on some of the humanitarian efforts.
Sure. What I would add is the value of both humanitarian and development assistance funding on the social support systems of the host countries, so Jordan, Lebanon. In particular, our funding, along with that of other donors, has gone to support, as Shirley says, education systems, social protection systems. So has helped host countries really maintain their own political stability, managed any potential social division or strife that might have resulted. So I think that that's an outcome that we really need to take into account.
Certainly. And I'm curious as to the region of Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, Gaza, East Jerusalem, occupied West Bank. With respect to this region, the spending here in question doesn't relate to that, does it?
I would say this strategy was put in place in 2016, and obviously I think the context has evolved since then, and I think the priorities under which where we've actually been dispersing the funding and have also evolved. And at the beginning of the strategy, it was really an immediate threat by Daesh, why the strategy was put in place. And at the present, we're really now integrating emerging priorities, including food security and climate. The funding within this strategy isn't specific for the conflict in Gaza, but certainly there is some support for the missions in that region.
Certainly, and we're very happy that now Daesh is a marginal actor in the region. With respect to democratic development and the development of civil society into the future for Gaza and the occupied West Bank, East Jerusalem, are you looking at that and how we can, as a G7 country, help further peace in the Middle East?
I don't have the response to that in particular, but maybe what I can say is we do recognize the importance of our civil society or organizations in general, just in terms of greater localization and effectiveness for international aid. But I can possibly get back to you with some further information if you're interested. Yeah, did you have something, Peter?
No, so I would say also the next panelists will probably have something more to say on that.
Yeah.
Definitely interested. Thank you very much.
So we now go to Mr. Bergeron. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope that we'll have the opportunity to hear the minister speak on the estimates, but thank you so much for being here today to answer our questions. In 1B and 5B, it's indicated that there's a request for extra funding of over $11 million for, and I quote, to reinforce the diplomatic presence of Canada in Central and in Europe and in the Caucasian region. Are we looking at increasing Canada's presence at the European Council and to open up a permanent mission as other observer states have done?
Question. What I can tell you is the funding that's included within these estimates of 63.5 million, or sorry, of 12.77 million. They have been used so far to establish a mission or an embassy in Armenia, and also to convert offices in Estonia, Lithuania, and Slovakia, and also to bolster our presence in Latvia. At present, I'm not aware of any plans to increase the presence in the area that you've cited. Thank you.
Within the Indo-Pacific framework, funding is being requested in the amount of over $61 million in 1B, 5B, 10B. In order to reinforce the ability to deal with visa requests. Could you tell me, given the current situation, where are we with this?
Much for the question. I'll just ask my colleague Amanda to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to respond to this question. The Indo-Pacific strategy is a strategy over 5 years, renewable for a further 5 years, for 10 years and beyond. So when we look at the Indo-Pacific strategy, it is over the long term, and the objectives of the strategy over the long term remain unchanged. We recognize that in the course of that time, that the context in the region will undoubtedly ebb and flow, things will change, and we will have to make tactical decisions in the short term to reorient our position. So with respect to the reinforcement of resources for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, the objectives within the strategy remain the same, and we will be looking at how we achieve those objectives in the short term until things are able to settle down with respect to the specifics that you mentioned.
Merci beaucoup. La stratégie Indo-Pacifique confirme.
Thank you so much. The Indo-Pacific strategy shows that there's a wish to continue work with Taiwan to fight against disinformation, as was asked for by the Sino-Canadian Committee. So where are we? What is the situation now with this cooperation with Taiwan?
Much for the question, and Amanda.
Excellent. Thank you again for this question. And I'm going to have to limit myself somewhat in answering this question because I am not the expert on the bilateral relations within that region of the Indo-Pacific. But what I will say is this, that we have money under the strategy to promote peace, resilience, and security. And what that includes is augmented intelligence capacity, security partnerships, and capacity building, cyber diplomacy, and security funding as well. So we can certainly get back to you with further information on specific initiatives that are happening on a bilateral basis, but I'm afraid that I don't have a lot of further detail that I can provide on that at the moment.
Tout ce que vous pourrez nous fournir sera des plus intéressants.
So anything that you can provide would be very interesting. In May, the World Food Program, the U.S. had stopped their aid before starting up again in October with regards to the food program, following a reformulation of the Guarantee of Control for refugees. Ethiopia is one of the main beneficiaries of international aid. Has Canada reviewed its control system and its aid to Ethiopia, as did the World Food Program, considering the fact that during the crisis, in Tigray, we wanted to make sure that aid was being provided to people in the field.
Yeah, colleague Peter McDougall to respond.
Thank you very much for the question. The vast majority of our aid in Ethiopia goes through the World Food Program, so we were in close contact with them throughout the period of their review and are satisfied with the outcomes of the review, and the aid is flowing again.
À la bonne heure. Merci beaucoup.
That's good news. Thank you. With regards to the strategy for the Middle East, it's being additional budgets for over 64 million are being asked for this strategy. In the main estimates, over $4 billion is allocated to the development program for peace and security. In November 2017, there was an international summit on maintaining peace in Vancouver. The Prime Minister said that Canada would provide a rapid intervention force, 200 soldiers. Up until now, there's only a handful that have been sent. Where are we at with the development of this quick and rapid intervention unit?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm sorry I don't have that information with me, but I would be happy to go back to the department and find out where we are in terms of that intervention. Thank you.
Est-ce que
Your time is over, Mr. Bergeron. You're 20 seconds over. We now go to Madam McPherson. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of the witnesses for being here today. I do want to just take a moment to express my disappointment that neither minister was made available to come to committee. It's quite unprecedented that is the case. So while I appreciate your presence here, I do want to articulate how disappointed I think all the committee is that the ministers were not made available to come and answer these questions in person. And I wonder if you had any insight as to why that might be the case.
Thank you very much for the question, but no, unfortunately, I'm not sure, why they were not available to attend today.
Yeah, very disappointing. I'd like to ask a little bit about something that we learned recently. 2 weeks ago, I asked the government about landmine detonators that were sent to Kyrgyzstan from Canada that were diverted to Russia. Of course, Canada is funding landmine clearance in Ukraine. So there is a real concern that these detonators are being used to arm Russia, which is we are then paying to demine. When I asked that question in the House, the parliamentary secretary was unable to answer me at that time, and we've not heard back from the parliamentary secretary since then. Can you tell me what the status of that investigation is and why Canada is in fact exporting any landmine detonators at all?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Unfortunately, I don't have that answer with me. I do know that Canada has one of the tightest regimes just in terms of our export strategies and controls. So I'd be very surprised if we were actually providing that kind of equipment, I guess. But I'll definitely go back to the department and try to find you an answer.
Yeah, I would really appreciate if we could receive written information on that, because saying that we have a very tight regime and then hearing the reports that we are in fact providing detonators to Russia is the opposite of a tight regime, obviously. New Democrats, of course, have been calling for more democracy in our arms exports for years. So I am a little concerned when I hear that we don't know what is being sent, there is no sort of concept of how they're being used, where they are going. How many staff within Global Affairs are tasked with tracking arms exports, and what are the current staffing levels in the export division, and who among them are tasked with transparency and reporting to Parliament? It's a bit of a long one.
Yeah, thank you very much for those questions. Again, I don't have that information with me, but would be happy to provide that in writing to the committee.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. I now have a couple questions on Canada's Middle East strategy. So votes 1B and 10B of the SUPs include funding for Canada's Middle East strategy. With regards to the Middle East, and in particular the war, of course, in Israel and Palestine, what is the government's response to the proposal by the Israeli government ministers and the Knesset members to, quote, voluntarily move, end quote, Gazans to other countries that Israel is no longer able to put up with, quote, existence of an independent entity in Gaza, end quote. Does the government agree that moving Gazans to other countries in the Middle East or elsewhere would amount to ethnic cleansing and would therefore be illegal?
Well, thank you very much for your question. Unfortunately, I don't have the information available to respond. I would maybe note that my colleague, who is in charge of that region of the world, is appearing during the second 50 minutes this afternoon, and so perhaps that would be a question that he may be prepared to respond to.
Yeah, and certainly I will have many, many questions for him. Mr. McDougall, I know that you have been an expert in the area. Would you have any insight into that question as well?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. And the second question I have there, Canada's Middle East strategy has had 4 priority areas: security and stabilization, humanitarian assistance, development building, resilience, and diplomatic engagement. With regards to the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza, we are seeing all civilian infrastructure in the north destroyed. We know that millions have been made homeless. We know that people are starving. And today we are seeing Israel flood tunnels with seawater, which will destroy infrastructure for decades to come. We are seeing orchards, we are seeing farmers' fields destroyed. We know that will impact food security for decades to come. So we know that even though this conflict has killed tens of thousands of Palestinians, that includes over 7,000 children, it is also destroying the infrastructure of the region. So reconstruction, when that happens, if that happens, is likely to cost in the trillions of dollars. Who's going to pay for that reconstruction? And is Canada planning to increase its funding to this, given its role in allowing this violence to continue? What kind of financial responsibility will Canada be taking for the reconstruction of Gaza when this war is over?
Thank you very much for the question, and I'll just turn it to my colleague, Peter McDougall, for a response.
Thank you. I'll just respond to what we're doing now. So in the West Bank and Gaza, we, on a regular basis, spend $55 million a year, 35 of it in humanitarian, of which 25 million goes to UNRWA for its work.
Sorry, sir, but with all due respect, I'm asking what you will be doing in the future.
But I'm answering the question.
Okay.
And $20 million on development assistance. In addition, the government has announced $60 million after the war began on humanitarian assistance. So the focus of Canada and, frankly, of all other donors is on humanitarian assistance at the moment, because that is where the needs are most dire. I would say the question of reconstruction, you're absolutely right, is one that would have to be addressed, but the immediate needs are life-saving and humanitarian.
So has there been a discussion on what the future rebuilding fund may look like?
In my bailiwick, I focus on humanitarian assistance, so I have not been part of that.
Thank you. I think that's my time.
I'm afraid. So we now go to the second round. For the second round, 5 minutes, MP up. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the officials for being here today. Similar to the reallocation process, red tape reduction process you're doing with your foreign affairs aspect, I understand you're also in that process with grants and contributions. I also know that you're transitioning potentially out of a legacy system. How have you engaged with your CSO, or the Canadian CSOs, on that process? They're basically the clients of that system. Can you describe that engagement?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm not unable to describe the engagement in great detail. I do know that extensive consultations with Canadian partners have been taking place, and I know that throughout the project. So this is really a multi-year project that we're calling our G's and C's Transformation Initiative. And throughout that process, we will be, in contact with our partners to better understand what their requirements are.
I understand that they look forward to that. When addressing a need, you have there's decisions to be made whether to run that through multilateral or Canadian organizations. In that process of looking at grants and contributions, that whole process, will the administrative burden or the accountability measures be examined so that it's just as easy for Global Affairs to award to a Canadian-based CSO versus a multilateral organization?
Thank you very much for that question. I would say that, yes, all of our processes and all of our various enhancements and whatnot that we're doing will all take those things into consideration. So the overall objective of the G's and C's transformation really is to reduce that administrative burden, again, both within the department, but as well as with all of our partners, and even going in so far as to work with the Treasury Board Secretariat, just in terms of the grants and contributions policy and how we may be able to streamline things to make things a little bit easier for folks.
Thank you. There are allegations that one of the recipients of multilateral funding, UNRWA, is complicit in war crimes. Can you comment?
Thank you very much for the question, but I don't have a comment on that. Thanks.
Okay. Are they aware of the allegations?
What I would say is that, you know, from a Government of Canada perspective, we don't condone any of those condone that kind of activity, and we would definitely ask that our partners take swift action if something like
If you
that
could
occurs.
table any information that you have on that with the committee, that would be great.
Yep.
Switching gears a little bit, I do appreciate the clarity that which Global Affairs funds the International Joint Commission. It's one line, it's very clear to follow. You're aware that there's been a request to change the machinery of government for the Great Lakes Fishery Commission at the PMO office since April of 2022, yes, almost 2 years ago. Would it be the intention of Global Affairs to account for or to report the funding to the Great Lakes Fishery Commission in the same manner for this international treaty that you're doing the International Joint Commission?
Thank you very much for the question. Unfortunately, I don't have that answer with me, but again, I would be happy to get back to you in terms of the way forward on that.
Thank you. In your opening remarks, you talked about the replenishment of the crisis pool. What's the accountability mechanism there for the funds that are spent?
Just in terms of the crisis pool, at the beginning of every fiscal year, Global Affairs Canada does have access to $200 million within, well, they're frozen within our reference levels. And so when different crises do occur around the globe and we require additional funding above and beyond what we have in our existing base reference level, we can make a request to access and unfreeze the funding that's in our quick release mechanism. And so definitely what we would need to go towards, have to have a letter signed by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Finance, as well as the Minister of Development, and that would be sent to the PM.
Specifically to the $25 million that the International Development Minister can access immediately, is there a different accountability mechanism?
So what we're asking for in these supplementary estimates is just to bring forward funding that was unspent from last year into our reference levels to this year, so that if there is a requirement for those funds, that we would be able to access them. I don't know, Peter, if you'd like to add any additional details.
That's fine. I want to get one more question if I can. Ethiopia, as been mentioned before, has been a large recipient of funding in the past. In fact, they've actually incorporated some of the work that Canada's helped them with into their own agricultural extension programs done through a CSO that I'm familiar with here in Canada. Canada's a leader in ag innovation. Now, I'm talking about specifically around the $430 billion of climate financing. Can you just break down how much of that is actually earmarked with agricultural initiatives, an area that Canada is an expert at and can and possibly help other regions of the world as well?
Well, thank you very much for that question, but unfortunately, I don't have that information with me.
If you could table that with the committee.
Peter,
go ahead.
yeah.
I can give you so just maybe on our overall, on this particular, the $430 million we're seeking this year, most of that is not ag related, but agriculture, climate smart agriculture is one of our 4 main thematics in the climate finance program, so it's absolutely a major priority for us. In 22-23, we spent approximately $230 million on climate smart agriculture and food systems.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP Epp. We now go to MP Chattel. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, when countries invest or have a strong woman in leadership, I think we can all agree that they invest in people. I mean, yes, when you have a leader of a party which 18% are women, you could imagine the leader invests in his own ego, as we saw a beautiful documentary proving this. But that invite me to ask you about the project, the additional funding that you request for a very important program. It's called the program Women Voice and Leadership Program, to ensure that women in countries like Canada have leaders that are women. And I'd like to know more about what are these critical projects that this additional funding will bring.
Thank you very much for the question. Support for women's rights is at the cornerstone, as you know, of our as our Canada's Feminist International Assistance Policy. But perhaps I can turn to my colleague Peter McDougall to provide some additional details with specifics on those initiatives.
Sure. So this $7 million per year would start the second round, 5-year cycle of the Women's Voice and Leadership program. So it will continue to support women's rights organizations, expanding our support in conflict and crisis-affected contexts, but also going beyond and challenging some of the structural barriers for excluded groups such as women with disabilities, LGBTQI women groups. And we're going to work in about 30 to 35 countries, very closely with local NGOs, and really enhancing our partnership with the Global South more generally. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe some great inspiration for your leader and your party. Great project. I think should get an inspiration from that. J'aimerais aussi parler.
I'd also like to speak about investments in climate, and I'm interested by the foreign investments that we make with regards to sustainable agriculture. I think that food security and climate change are intimately linked. So what are the projects that we will be able to fund with this additional money?
Thank you very much for the question, and perhaps again I will turn it to my colleague Peter McDougall.
Okay, thank you. So this $430 million will go to 4 specific projects, some of which include agriculture. So the first is working with the Inter-American Development Bank, and this is a Climate Resilience Accelerator Fund, and this would bring together a number of donors offering concessional finance working in the Latin American and Caribbean, so looking at predominantly adaptation projects. A second one is a Canadian Climate and Nature Fund for the private sector in Asian context, and this one in particular is focused on climate-smart agriculture, and that's a $182 million loan. And then a couple of other initiatives which would most definitely touch agriculture, which is support to the Green Climate Fund, as well as a climate action initiative in the Caribbean, which would also have some elements of agriculture.
Et un projet spécifique là, sur...
And one specific project
for additional funding for this year are in the process of being negotiated. I'd have to get you the specific details. We have literally hundreds of projects in this portfolio, so I can give you a specific example in writing.
Merci beaucoup. Et si je peux...
Thank you. And if I still have time left, I'm very interested as well with what will be put forward in order to help developing countries to face the effects of climate change. And you also were talking about the protection of biodiversity that is declining significantly throughout the world. Are there targeted sectors that are losing biodiversity at a faster rate?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm not sure I have the specific response to the question that you've asked, but what I can say is that the funding that's provided in these supplementary estimates for biodiversity program, it'll support 3 different thematic areas, so conservation and restoration, sustainable use of biodiversity, and enabling environment and mainstreaming function.
Monsieur, est-ce qu'il me reste le temps pour...
Do I have time for one last?
Merci beaucoup.
So next we go to Mr. Bergeron, 2.5 minutes. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that you clearly indicated that the Middle East strategy was developed in a perspective where Daesh was a problem for the region. In those circumstances, where or to whom would these additional funds be used for the Middle East strategy?
Thank you very much for the question. In terms of the funding and the partners that we've used in the past with respect to the Middle East, we do tend to use very experienced and principals partners, just given the challenges within the region, particularly when we're thinking about humanitarian assistance. So we use predominantly the UN agencies as well as multilateral organizations and NGOs.
J'ai aucun doute là.
I have no doubt about that, but I'd like to know is that now that the main issue that was identified for the Middle East strategy does no longer exist or not in the same way, doesn't have the same importance. So here's another way to ask the question. How did we reorient our Middle East strategy given the geostrategic changes in this region?
I'm sorry. I think I understand what it is you're looking for now. So I think I mentioned earlier the strategy has evolved to reflect Canada's priorities in the region, and we've now integrated emerging priorities such as food security and climate change.
Si j'ai bien compris dans votre réponse à monsieur.
So I've understood in your answer to Mr. Zuberi, there's nothing in here that is foreseen over the shorter term for the Gaza population?
Thank you very much for the question. Specifically within these supplementary estimates, we haven't requested any additional funding to respond. The response that we've done so far has been done within our existing reference levels. Except we have requested some funding from our crisis pool, but it's fairly minimal for this fiscal year, West Bank Gaza at $3 million, in addition to the other funding that we've supported through our existing reference levels.
Très rapidement, pour terminer.
So very quickly, to end, where and to whom will the government provide $100 million for international aid for investing in world health?
Thank you very much for that question. I'll just turn it to my colleague, Peter McDougall.
Okay. This $100 million is part of the 10-year commitment on global health and SRHR, and so this brings us to $1.4 billion per year starting this fiscal year. So this $100 million will go to a wide range of priorities on SRHR and global health, and the range of partners we work with are the ones I think that you would know well, whether the Global Fund,
I'm going to have
World
to
Health Organization.
ask that you conclude. Thank you. And for the last question, we go to MP McPherson.
Thank you very much,
2.5
Mr. Chair.
minutes.
Thank you, and thank you again to the witnesses for being here today. I had a question about a specific initiative that Global Affairs is undertaking, and it is the Small and Medium Organization Initiative. So we know that it was highly successful. It was piloted and came back with highly successful outcomes, and yet a decision has not been made on refunding or providing continued funding on that. And also just in terms of even a short-term extension to allow the organizations to continue to work while that decision is being made, we are running out of time for these organizations. And knowing how important small and medium organizations are with regards to public engagement, to having very critical long-term relationships with partners in the Global South, do you have any update on funding for the SMO funds?
Thank you very much for the question, but unfortunately I don't have any additional information with me today on that.
Because I would just reiterate that it was a highly successful fund, and I think it would be a missed opportunity to not provide funding for small and medium organizations across the country. It is a way to engage people coast to coast to coast in ways that larger organizations are often unable to do. My next question, in 2019, so we're now 2024 almost, so almost 5 years ago, I guess, the Liberals promised to establish a, quote, Canadian Centre for Peace, Order and Good Governance to expand the availability of Canadian expertise and assistance to those seeking to build peace, advance justice, promote human rights and democracy, and deliver good governance. Where is that promise at?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm not aware of where that particular promise would be, but we'd be happy to go back to the department and get that information.
We would love to get more information about that. And I would just say, you know, of the two questions that I, you know, several of the questions I asked, it's something that you're not able to answer, and I certainly don't hold that against you at all. But I would just reiterate that if the minister was here, she would be able to answer, he or she would be able to answer some of these questions for us. And I think as parliamentarians, we have the job to ensure that we get the answers to these questions. So just once again would like to reiterate that the ministers should be here doing this. You should not be having to answer these questions that you don't have the answers for. But thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you ever so much. So at this point, I will thank our three witnesses. Very, very grateful that you were here with us today. Thank you, Ms. Carruthers, Ms. Strohan, and Mr. McDougall. Very grateful indeed. So now we will suspend for a few minutes and delve right into our second panel. back, members. Now, pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee will proceed to a briefing on the situation in Israel and Gaza. I'd like to welcome our two witnesses from Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development. We are fortunate to have with us today Mr. Alexandre Levesque, the Assistant Deputy Minister for Europe, Arctic, Middle East, and Maghreb. And we also have Mr. Sébastien Bouliot, the Director General and Chief Security Officer for Security and Emergency Management. I understand that there's only one opening remark. Is that correct? Mr. Levesque?
Chair, we did prepare two.
Oh, okay.
But
Great.
we're in your hands.
Absolutely. No, if the witnesses want to speak.
Point of order.
Yes.
It is standard procedure. If they have prepared two,
Absolutely.
They would be allowed to be given
Absolutely. So, Mr. Levesque, we'll start off with you. You have 5 minutes, after which we will go to Monsieur Bouliot. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I want to thank you for the invitation to brief the committee today on recent events in Israel, the Gaza Strip, and the West Bank. The situation is developing quickly, and I will focus on how the conflict is evolving and Canada's response. While there had been a pause in hostilities from November 22nd to 29, the agreement expired last Friday, and sadly, fighting has resumed. The 7-day truce had been a positive step in the right direction, which enabled the release of 110 hostages and allowed many families to be reunited. The pause also permitted the accelerated delivery of humanitarian assistance into Gaza, including fuel and cooking oil, as well as food, water, and medical supplies. As the Prime Minister has stated, the Government of Canada urges maximum restraint and is calling for more pauses in hostilities. An increased, sustained, and unimpeded delivery of aid into Gaza is critically urgent, as is the unconditional and immediate release of all hostages held by Hamas. Canada
continues to work with its partners in the region and throughout the world. We have indicated that we support the right for Israel to defend itself against the terrorist actions of Hamas within the parameters of international law. As the government has stated publicly and in private, it is essential that Israel defend itself according to rules set out by international humanitarian law. The first of these rules is the protection of civilians. All parties need to respect international humanitarian law.
Gaza remains a significant concern for the government. Latest reports indicate that nearly 1.8 million Palestinians have been displaced from their homes since October 7. It is estimated that at least 15,000 have been killed, a large portion of which are civilian and children. It is impossible for us to independently verify these figures, but there is no doubt that many innocent Palestinian civilians continue to suffer deeply. The humanitarian assistance that has been allowed into Gaza thus far is progress. However, it is clear that much more is needed to address the urgent humanitarian needs of Palestinian civilians. Canadian officials continue to call on all parties to ensure the continued safe, unimpeded delivery of humanitarian aid, including food, fuel, water, and medicine into Gaza, so that life-saving assistance reaches those that need it most. Canada remains one of the largest contributors of humanitarian and development assistance to vulnerable Palestinians, with an average spend of $55 million per year. With regard to the current crisis in Gaza, Canada's contribution stands at $60 million, including a matching fund of $13.7 million that leveraged the generosity of Canadians. All of our funding to support Palestinians goes through trusted partner organizations, such as UN agencies and the Red Crescent, to name a couple. We will support their efforts to deliver humanitarian assistance while ensuring that none of the funding goes into the hands of Hamas. Canada exercises enhanced due diligence for all humanitarian and development assistance funding for Palestinians. This effort includes a systematic screening process and strong anti-terrorism provisions in funding agreements. It is critical that we emphasize that Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people, nor their legitimate aspirations. It has not advanced the well-being of the people it claims to represent. It chose to attack Israel, where it committed atrocities and murdered innocent civilians and took hostages in total violation of all international laws and norms. Hamas is a terrorist organization. Turning briefly to the broader region, it is essential that this conflict not become regionalized and spread to neighboring areas. In this respect, Iran's rhetoric in support of Hamas, statements by terrorist group Hezbollah, and the launching of rockets into and towards Israel and American forces by actors affiliated with Iran in Lebanon, Iraq, and Yemen are all deeply concerning. Les représentants canadiens à tous les niveaux
Canadian representatives continue to work with partners in the region and throughout the world to deal with the situation. The government is determined to ensure that international law will be respected and to support the rights of Israelis and Palestinians to live in peace and security.
The government is committed to a just and lasting peace in the Middle East. It will continue to support the right of the Israeli and Palestinian peoples to live in peace and security. It will continue to support a two-state solution as the long-standing, internationally agreed means to achieve this outcome. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levesque. We now go to Monsieur Beaulieu.
Merci, bonsoir, good evening. Since October 7th, staff in Ottawa and missions on the ground in Tel Aviv, Ramallah, Amman, Cairo, Beirut, and Athens have been responding and assisting Canadians, permanent residents, and their immediate family. Since the last briefing to this committee on October 23rd, a number of developments on Canada's consular and emergency response have happened, and I'm pleased to update you today. The recent pause mentioned by my colleague also entailed a suspension of the daily movement of foreign nationals out of Gaza, including Canadians. But these movements of foreign nationals have since resumed, and close to 150 Canadians, permanent residents, and their immediate family members have left Gaza since Saturday. And I'm pleased to report that another 7 left Gaza today. Overall, that's over 600 Canadians, PRs, and immediate family members who've been able to leave Gaza since November 1st. Les efforts du Canada soutiennent.
Canada's efforts support one of the most important evacuation efforts in Gaza in terms of numbers. Egypt and other countries have evacuated more countries than Canada, and we have evacuated more people than other European countries. And this, in our interactions with Canadians, we've received over 15,000 calls. Behind the figures are human beings that we are helping, and my team and our colleagues throughout the network are very proud of their work, even if it's difficult work, and they are pleased with each crossing, with each evacuation that's made outside of Gaza.
Of this committee was on October 23rd, which also coincided with the last scheduled assisted departure flight from Tel Aviv, which brought to a total of 1,661 assisted departures by air. Turning to the West Bank, we've also supported assisted departure options from the West Bank for close to 80 people into Jordan. Et pour ce qui est de la bande de Gaza,
with regards to the Gaza Strip, Rafah is the only exit point out of Gaza. Since November the 1st, over 600 Canadians and permanent residents and their immediate families have been able to leave Gaza. Our team in Cairo is waiting in order to welcome Canadians and PRs that are able to exit. They will be there to provide essential needs, to transport them towards Cairo, to provide medical support, consular assistance, documentation help, and all other aid that is necessary given the circumstances. We're working hard for the 200 Canadians that are still in the Gaza Strip and that have asked for our assistance. This is a complicated job to get to Rafah, and then it's a process that requires authorization by local authorities. We don't control who is providing the authorizations and who can enter into Egypt. We know that all Canadians are facing extremely difficult conditions, and we're doing everything we can to facilitate their exit out of Gaza. Our emergency response and our evacuation is for Canadians and permanent residents and members of their families, as defined by the immigration law and the Refugee Protection Act. And by definition, Canada has one of the largest contingent of evacuees from Gaza. It will be our pleasure to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We will now go to the members for questions. We start off with MP Chong. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for appearing. We all watched the horrific atrocities committed by Hamas on October 7th against some 1,200 Israeli civilians who were not only killed by Hamas, but also many of them were brutally tortured, mutilated, and raped. In addition, more than 200 Israeli and other citizens were taken hostage. You mentioned in your opening remarks that the Government of Canada assesses that these hostage takings of some 200 civilians is a violation of international law. The Fourth Geneva Convention and the 1977 Geneva Convention make it clear that taking of civilian hostages is strictly forbidden at all times and by all parties and constitutes war crimes. In fact, the conventions refer to grave breaches of international law. In addition to the government assessing that these hostage takings were violations of international law, does the Government of Canada assess that these hostage takings constitute war crimes?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. These are matters of extreme gravity and that we take with the utmost seriousness. What I would say is that when it comes to the assessment of crimes, whether it's war crimes or others under international law, these are not conclusions that can be reached lightly or expeditiously. It would be premature and even irresponsible to make such conclusions at this point.
But I mean, some of them were Canadian citizens. Like, surely nobody's disputing they were taken hostage. Just the very act of hostage taking is considered a grave breach under the Geneva Conventions and constitutes in of itself, no matter how the hostages are treated, because they are civilians, to be a war crime. Would you not agree with that?
First of all, I am not a lawyer, and I can't give you a legal interpretation of this. Yes, we agree with you with the interpretation that hostage
surely
taking
the department has come to a conclusion that these are war crimes, because there's no dispute about the several hundred hostages that were taken.
What I'm saying is
point of order. Mr. Chair, I'm trying to hear the witness's answer to the question, but I'm unable to hear his answer. I'm just hoping that we can actually get the answer to the question.
It's my time, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I'm saving your time.
Okay, thank you. It's funny how I constantly get interrupted by members of the ministerial party on this committee from time to time. But surely the department has come to an assessment. I mean, there were Canadians amongst the hostages taken. The taking of hostages in and of itself, civilian hostages, both whether in an international conflict or a non-international conflict, constitutes a war crime under the Geneva Convention. Surely the government's come to some sort of conclusion on this.
Not conclusion yet, no, sir. Again, this is an
surprising.
interpretation.
Maybe I can ask you something else. Does the Government of Canada assess that the deliberate atrocities committed by Hamas against the some 1,200 civilians on October 7th constitute war crimes?
Mr. Chair, in order to make that determination, evidence needs to be collected. Proper legal experts need to analyze that evidence, submit it to law enforcement, to legal experts. So the premise is a just one. You're absolutely right. But it would be premature from a legal perspective to pronounce on an outcome of something that merits due legal process.
Okay, well, let me just say this, then. I assume then the Government of Canada has not assessed that the State of Israel has committed war crimes.
My answer would be the same, sir. We need to collect evidence, and it would be irresponsible
I appreciate your answers. Thank you. You mentioned UNRWA in your opening remarks. UNRWA has long had problems being associated with terrorism. For example, on May 8th of 2008, Reuters reported that an UNRWA headmaster, a teacher, was a rocket maker for Islamic Jihad. More recently, after October 7th atrocities by Hamas, UN Watch documented some 20 UNRWA teachers and staff celebrating the atrocities on their social media accounts. And even more recently, just a week ago, there are allegations that one of UNRWA's teachers detained one of the Israeli hostages. This report was from an Israeli journalist, Baker of Israeli Channel 13. He said that one of the hostages was held for almost 50 days in the attic of a house by a teacher with UNRWA. This teacher is a father of 10 children who locked the abductee in the attic, hardly providing him with food and did not provide him with medicine. Is the department looking into this very serious allegation?
Thank you. All allegations of this type would be looked into. I'm not familiar with this particular one, but these are very serious allegations. And as I said,
it was mentioned in the Washington Post recently, so surely the department's looking into this. This is a pretty serious thing, seeing that some of the hostages that were taken were Canadian.
Yes, we would absolutely look into this.
Okay, so could you get back to the committee and tell us whether or not the department is looking into this? Because the government's made commitments about ensuring that none of Canadians' taxpayer money is going into any activities in Gaza that would be in support of any terrorism.
UNRWA is a UN organization. It has been a trusted partner to deliver absolutely essential services to Palestinians in Gaza. But our mechanisms are also designed to detect fraud or to detect unacceptable or even terrorist activity, and we would absolutely pursue this and make sure to take corrective measures accordingly.
No further questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. We now go to MP Oliphant. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I have 4 things I'd like to raise. The first thing is a thank you to officials at Global Affairs Canada, both at headquarters, the people in the Emergency Watch and Response Centre who have had to step up, and that's extremely important, our missions in Ramallah and Tel Aviv, Egypt and Cairo, and maybe elsewhere that have been brought in, Amman perhaps, to thank. It has been unprecedented. Also the folks at development, including our folks who have been working on all of these things. So I think it's very important that parliamentarians thank officials for doing that, and thank you for being here. The second thing is with respect to evacuations. About 600 people have been evacuated from Gaza. I might have missed, did you tell us how many were evacuated from Israel and the West Bank? Even approximately.
Yes, out of Israel it's 1,661, and out of the West Bank it's close to 80 through Jordan.
Is there a queue in West Bank or Israel, or only about the 200 you mentioned in Gaza now?
The essence of the queue is related to Gaza, although we remain in contact with Canadians in the West Bank if ever they wish to depart or need our assistance to do so.
And I understand you're also preparing in Lebanon in case there should be a enlargement of the conflict. Is that true?
Canada and a large group of international allies have indeed done some preparatory work and planning, always prudent planning in the hope that it will not be necessary.
Thank you. And thank you also for the engagement with DND and everybody to get people out. The third area I want to talk about is development. And the humanitarian assistance, really, that has gone in. Can you expand a little bit upon what Canada's engagement is, the challenges you faced, the 4-day humanitarian pause, the helpfulness of that, and what we should be attempting to know in the next phase, and how we can move on that?
Certainly, thank you. And may I begin by thanking you for the kind words. We will pass those on to our colleagues who have been at the front lines and have been experimenting also some trauma. These words are very much appreciated. in terms of what Canada has done so far, so the baseline development assistance that is provided to Palestinian populations in Gaza, in the West Bank, and adjoining regions is in the vicinity of $55 million per year. And this is to assist with inclusive governance, with gender equality, employment opportunities, etc. Since the beginning of the crisis, as I said in my remarks, we've allocated so far $60 million to support humanitarian delivery and operations. And this is done through partnership with both UN organizations and civil society organizations on the ground. So there's a lot of coordination that happens with other donor countries, and the important part is giving as much flexibility as possible to these organizations, because they know more than anyone where the need is, where the greatest need is, and they can pre-position the aid. One of the greatest obstacles has, of course, been the fact that there's only been one point of entry, famous Rafah crossing, which traditionally was never designed for large commercial or humanitarian goods. It was a citizen, a person crossing, if you will, with others being used for commercial shipping and humanitarian assistance when needed. So that's been a huge challenge because of the inspections of every truck that needs to go into Gaza. And with international partners, what we are doing now is finding ways to accelerate, maybe using other border crossings to help facilitate. The pause was extremely helpful. It provided life-saving assistance, and what we need to see is a sustained cadence to be able to continue bringing particularly fuel, medicine, and food.
Last point is on the day after. And what kind of work are you doing, both in looking at the day after for Israel and to make sure it has safety and security, and that Hamas is eliminated? And what are we doing as well for the rebuilding of Gaza? Are we beginning to shape out those thoughts?
Thank you. It is, of course, our job as officials to try to prepare for the future. We know right now there is a phenomenal trust deficit between Palestinians and Israelis, between warring factions, and to conceive of a peace plan is almost unthinkable for the parties on the ground. But it is our job to think about this. It is our job to start talking to the middle ground individuals who can foresee a day on which a path, a political process to bring parties a little bit closer, to give security guarantees to both sides. Both feel extremely insecure right now, and to find other partners in the region, because the solution eventually is going to have to be one that is regional with support from international players. Canada very much counts on being and believes it can be one of those international players.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We next go to MP Bergeron. You have 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. I'm aware that you're not in a situation that's easy, and the fact that you're here today and your presence in different countries concerned constitutes a challenge. So thank you so much for all the work that you do. Many people and myself were surprised by the vote of Canada on November the 9th at the UN against a resolution denouncing the Israeli occupation and was of the West Bank, and was asking that the Geneva Convention be respected. With Israel, the U.S., Hungary, and 4 small states in the Pacific, Canada was one of the only states that voted against this resolution, and this even seemed to go against the traditional position taken by Canada, because in 2020, Canada indicated that it did not recognize the control of Israel over the occupied territories such as the West Bank, and we were in agreement with the Security Council saying that this was a serious hindrance to establishing peace in the region. Why this vote? Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Allow me, first of all, to make a few comments on the way that we determine the way that we will vote. These votes that have to do with the situation in the Palestinian territories are an annual ritual. And there are some underlying principles to our approach, and one of the principles is that the text of the resolution has to be based on international law. The respect of international law has to reflect the current dynamic in the field, but also there are attempts to politicize these resolutions, even in New York, in the head office of the UN. So we always seek to support votes that will encourage the pursuit of a two-state solution, and that will ultimately, that are fair, but also that avoid to unjustly isolate the state of Israel. And unfortunately, some of these resolutions, because of the dynamics in the region, target Israel in a unilateral and unfair way. So all these elements enter into play, and each year we review how we will vote. Sometimes small adjustments to the resolution allow us to change our vote, but this is what determines and explains the reason why we voted this way. So could you please send to the members of the committee the justification, the reasons why you took this position? And I would also like to ask you, what did you see that France, the UK, Germany, Italy, Japan, Australia, New Zealand did not see? I can't give you the exact detail on this, but if it's acceptable, we can provide an answer at a later date. Yes, thank you. The state of Israel, and after the U.S., is the country that is provided the most licenses for exportation of military equipment. Are you following up to ensure that arms and technology that we sell to Israel are not currently being used against civilian populations in Gaza? Microphone. What we have is a regime that controls exports, and this does consider the human rights situation in every country. And this is very important when we determine if an export permit will be given. So we do the work ahead of time, and we also have a framework agreement with the Israeli government for everything that has to do with cooperation in the field of defense. So these controls are done ahead of time. We always check to see who will be the end user of the technology, and also we continue to monitor how this equipment is being used. In light of what's happening right now, are you reassessing some export licenses? Each request is assessed individually. Of course, when products have already been sold and delivered, we can't reassess anything. We can look in terms of lessons learned, but what I can tell you is that each request is examined according to the principles that I've just laid out. I'll tell you that I was surprised to hear you say that you were not able to determine if the savage actions of Hamas on October 7th and the hostage-taking constituted or not a violation of international law. And to answer a question posed by Mr. Chong that you cannot tell us if the blockade imposed by Israel, if the bombing of civilian populations, if the displacement of civilian populations is a violation of international law. Don't you have a legal service?
I would ask you to provide a 15-second response.
Yes, we do have an international law service. Yes, it's part of the advice and that they provide. But the actions that you've just described are abhorrent. They are horrible. But my comment
right now. So we now go to MP McPherson. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, and I would like to thank the witnesses for coming and testifying and sharing the information with us today. I'm going to try to get through a number of questions because we only have you for a very short amount of time. How many arms export and brokering permits to Israel have been authorized by your department since October 7th? Okay. I asked your colleagues nearly 2 months ago if they could tell the committee whether Canadian military goods or technology, including components, are used by Israel in this current war. From what I understand from your answer to Mr. Bergeron, you're not able to answer that, whether that's accurate?
To the best of my knowledge, the answer would be no.
What about components for the F-35s Israel is using in Gaza?
I would not be able to answer that.
Canada manufactures components that then go to the United States and onwards to Israel, but these are unregulated and untracked from my understanding. Is the government's position that Canada should continue arming Israel at this time? And if so, how does that reconcile with Canada's obligations under the Arms Trade Treaty?
As I said to your colleague a minute ago, every request for an export permit for military or dual use is assessed on its own merits and on a case-by-case basis.
And as my colleague also asked, has GAC reviewed its assessment on export permits to Israel in light of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and the situation in the West Bank since October 7th?
Yes, I'm afraid the same answer would apply, and it's not to avoid. It really is genuine. It's not an across-the-board review, but every request would be reassessed on its own merit, including regarding the end user.
And can you please provide that assessment to the committee?
With pleasure.
Thank you. I would like to also ask some questions following up on Mr. Chong's question and Mr. Bergeron's question. You know, as you've made very clear, you're unable to provide, to declare whether or not something has been a war crime or a crime against humanity. And certainly what we saw the terrorist group Hamas do is in my opinion, very, very clearly that, but I understand the legal standards. However, what I do question is if the government is unable to make that assessment, it does feel very much like the government of Canada is playing a spoiler with regards to the International Criminal Court. So my question is, does the government continue to oppose the International Criminal Court's investigation into the situation in Palestine? And if so, on what basis?
I'd like to first try to clarify, because I haven't had a chance to finish on this, but you used a term that I would like to pick up on, which is legal standard. We are not suggesting that horrible crimes, murders, and
I think we all agree that they're horrible. But what I'm asking
exactly.
is Canada's support for the ICC, for the International Criminal Court. Do you support? Does Canada support the International Criminal Court investigations, war crimes committed by both sides in Palestine?
Do you mean as part of the current conflict?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we of course do support the International Criminal Court. We support independent prosecutors and investigators. There are technicalities when it comes to anything that refers to the state of Palestine, because Canada's official policy does not recognize Palestine as being an independent state.
Of course, it is signatory to the Rome Statute, so the ICC recognizes it.
Right, but other than that nuance, yes, we are firm supporters of the ICC.
Does the government of Canada oppose an ICC investigation into alleged war crimes or crimes against humanity and genocide that's committed by Hamas?
I'm not able to answer that question. I feel like there's a technicality there I wouldn't want to lead you astray.
Perhaps you could provide some of the more detailed information to the committee afterwards, where you could
on
look
everything,
at those technicalities.
Yes, international law technicality related, I think that would be a wise idea.
And can you please explain why Canada opposes the International Court of Justice advisory proceedings on the legal consequences arising from the policies and practices of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem?
I feel like I need to bring some of our legal experts in the future. I am not one of those legal experts, so we're going to have to come back to you in writing.
Thank you. And then finally, on this area of questioning, prior to submitting its opposition to the ICJ's advisory opinion this summer, did government officials hold meetings with other states to coordinate efforts to oppose the case at the ICJ?
I do not know. I'm going to have to come back to you.
But you would be willing to provide some of that information to the committee in writing? Thank you.
Pleasure.
I'd also like to ask a question about what's happening in the West Bank. We are seeing an increase in violence. So yesterday, the United States announced that it will be imposing travel bans on extremist Jewish settlers implicated in recent attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank. Will Canada be undertaking the same?
So we're aware of these measures that were just announced yesterday by the United States. Of course, anything pertaining to travel documents does not fall under Global Affairs Canada. This is something that falls under Department IRCC.
I would assume you would be asked for your opinion on that, though.
I tend to keep in my swim lane and not speak on behalf of another department when my competencies are of a different nature. So we would have to direct that question to IRCC, but I would say that generally speaking, yes, we are looking at the tools that are at our disposal. We have a different system from the United States. For example, they call it a visa ban, but for Israelis do not need a visa to come to Canada.
And
they
I have
need an electronic.
Try to get one more question in if I can. No, I'm done. Thank you.
So we now go to the second round, and we start off with Mr. Abultaif. You have 4 minutes, sir.
Well, thanks, Chair. Thanks for the witnesses. First question, reports suggesting that the support provided on the Gaza side by the department is not efficient. Almost it does not exist. Can you explain that, and can you confirm that?
I'll be happy to speak to Canada's efforts to bring out Canadians and permanent residents and their immediate family. We have, as I mentioned, one of the largest contingent of foreign nationals who came out, and we were able to assist them in crossing the Rafah border. Obviously, it's a very difficult environment. It's difficult for Canadians to get to Rafah. Communications are sometimes very difficult. But we are getting Canadians out, and we're very happy with everyone that crosses that border.
Thank you. You evacuate 600 people from Gaza, 80 from West Bank, 1661 from Israel. As far as Gaza, do you have any idea what's the number of people related to Canadian or Canadian PR or citizens that's still inside Gaza? Do we have any idea about the number?
We estimate that to be about 200 currently, but that number keeps fluctuating. But
so on SOS International websites where people go and register, which is the very minimum effort by the department to be able to allow people to report on their families inside. Do you have an idea what the number of the registers so far?
The number of registered Canadians in the region, remaining in Gaza, is approximately 200.
And on the website, do we know how many people have entered? What's the number of people or names been entered?
There's about 50 or 60 who have been in touch with us.
On the if human rights violations have been, it's a war at the end of the day. And it could happen on both sides. And then you said that you don't have any evidence on that at this point of time. It's not an easy decision to make. That then you said earlier that you've got a process going to be able to determine that, so you can go down the road to ICC or take both sides to the ICC. How can that, like, if you have no evidence now, and then you have a process on the other side, how can you add this up together just to make a logical case?
Maybe I'll just reiterate that no such process, given the gravity of the allegations, should be short-circuited or expedited. What I am saying is we do have experts in law enforcement and in the legal profession that are looking at this and that are comparing notes with international colleagues to collect evidence. But I think every lawyer would understand and appreciate that to be able to build a case and document it in such a way that it can be defended in a court of law, media reports are not sufficient. And so it is a matter of legal standards, not a matter of disregard for the gravity of the actions.
So if both parties committed human rights violations and as a result of this war, and one is a government, a country, like Israel, and the other side is Hamas, is a terrorist organization, how do you, is it true that with ICC you cannot take them both to court because one of them is not basically a state?
I can be brief again. This is a question of a legal technical level that is beyond my capacity to answer, so we will need to come back to you. I do not have that information on the jurisdiction, for example, of the ICC.
Thank you, Mr. Lebec. We now go to Mr. Zuberi. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to witnesses. A follow-up question to the one that you were just responding to. When you do come back, can you also come back to us and let us know if there are other parties in a similar situation to Hamas, a terror group, other parties that have been brought forth to the ICC or ICJ, and whether or not one of these two tribunals or both have adjudicated on disputes to parties that are not a signatory to the conventions or do not fall under, as an analogous case to Mr. Abtayev, just to complete that answer that you would provide.
Take good note of this, Mr. Chair.
So I'll start off by saying I'm sure we're all agreeing that we want goodness for everybody in the Middle East, regardless of faith, background, ethnicity. And I hope and expect that all of us in this House are, and I do know, I shouldn't say expect, I know that we are all seeking that same thing. Goodness for everyone, regardless of faith, background, or ethnicity in the region. That being said, has the current Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, made any statements around the two-state solution as of late? And if so, what are they?
I have not noted recent statements of the Israeli Prime Minister on that topic. I can tell you about our own statements.
What, if you briefly, on our own statements?
The Government of Canada continues to believe that the only way for Israelis and Palestinians to live in dignity, security, side by side, is to pursue a path that will lead to a two-state solution.
That is a viable Palestinian state living in peace and security beside the state of Israel, correct?
Affirmative.
Okay. This is in line with our international partners, namely Secretary Blinken and Biden have both underscored the same point. On 6th of November, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that it would be signaled that Israel would want to assume responsibility over Gaza for an indefinite period. And Secretary Blinken, in reply, said that would be a big mistake. Is Canada's position that Gaza should not be reoccupied, as is the position of America?
Our position is that there will need to be a transition time between this extreme state of hostilities and a time when we all hope the two peoples can live in a two-state side-by-side status. The path between the current state and that end state is one that is very difficult to see through the fog right now, and nobody has a clear answer. What I can say is that there's a large number of thinkers, diplomats, civil servants, civil society who are actively thinking these things through, and as I said earlier, seeking the voices that occupy the middle ground rather than the extremes.
Have you taken note that the Secretary General of the UN, for the first time since 2017, invoked Article 99 of the UN Charter, calling on the Security Council to act over the Israeli-Palestinian crisis and naming it as a threat to international security? And have you taken note that since the beginning, or I should not say the beginning, but approximately a week into this conflict, that the UN has called for a humanitarian ceasefire?
If you could answer very briefly, please.
Yes, we're aware of these statements, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Levesque. We now go to Mr. Bergeron. 2 minutes, sir.
I have two last questions. I will ask them one after the other, and hopefully you'll have time to answer them, and if not, you can send a written answer. More than 2/3 of the people who have been killed in Gaza are women and children. Considering the feminist foreign policy of the federal government, is this statistic something that would influence Canada's decision-making? And you both focused on a humanitarian pause that you saw as something positive, and nobody can deny that. But Mr. Netanyahu stated to the members of his cabinet that Israeli military members supported this pause, but they said that it will allow Israeli soldiers to prepare themselves for the rest of the battle. And when the battle resumed, they were even more deadly, more intense than before. And do you believe that there is a will to come to a pause in order to find an out to this situation? I can talk about Canada's will. They would like to see an end to hostilities, and that civilians be protected. Your statistics are very concerning because it's the most vulnerable who suffered, women and children, during this crisis. And that's why we're asking for humanitarian aid and to protect civilian infrastructure. I will just have to interrupt you.
We're 40 seconds, Mr. Bergeron, we are already 40 seconds over. I think in fairness to the other members, we're now going to have to move on. Madam McPherson, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and again, thank you to the witnesses for being here today. Has Canada made any formal complaint to the government of Israel over the genocidal rhetoric that we've heard from right-wing ministers, such as the call for, I quote, a new Nakba, the use of the term human animals by Israel's defense minister, calls to completely destroy Gaza, and the heritage minister saying Israel should drop an atomic bomb on Gazans? What is Canada's comment on that language from the Israeli government?
I would say that we find this type of rhetoric very concerning, counterproductive, and opposite to the hope we collectively have to bring down the temperature and find a middle ground that would eventually lead to a political process.
And has there been a formal complaint? Will there be a formal complaint about such language?
I don't know what you mean by formal complaints, but diplomats and government officials talk all the time, and yes, we do convey our
And
views
that has been conveyed.
of such. I can't speak about what private diplomatic conversations, I can't go into the details of that, but I can tell you that when we hear outrageous or provocative comments, we do have ways of conveying our disagreement with it.
Well, it would be perhaps useful to have that be a public statement that could be made perhaps by the minister. I just have one question for you. I feel we've left you out a little bit. So, there is serious risks about this conflict spreading throughout the region. We know how difficult it has been to get Canadians out of Gaza, and thank you to all of the officials who worked so hard to make that happen, and hope you will continue to do that work. If this does expand into Lebanon, what is the Canadians' plan? Because right now we have hundreds of thousands of Canadian Lebanese that would...
We have detailed emergency planning, working with our missions in Beirut, obviously. We also give clear advice to Canadians not to travel to Lebanon and to avoid travel to Lebanon.
Thank you very much. That concludes our questioning. Very, very grateful, Mr. Levesque and Mr. Beaulieu. We're grateful that you made the time and you shared your perspective with us. So if everyone agrees, this meeting stands adjourned.